How to improve your TOEFL listening by 3 points. So, it's test day. You're in the listening section. Here's a conversation between a student and a campus worker. What's your goal? What are you thinking? What are you trying to accomplish when you're listening to this conversation? Now, most people say they want to understand everything. They're just listening and they just want to understand everything. That's what the average test taker does, but a smart test taker that gets the best possible score on test day, that improves their score by 3 points, listens with goals in mind. So before you listen to the conversation, you should be thinking, I want to try to do this. Let's do that together. Let's find your goals, the things that you should be listening for when you're listening to a conversation and to a lecture. This is how you're going to improve your score. The first thing you want to try to do when you're listening to a conversation, we'll start with the conversation. First thing you want to do is you want to understand the student's confusion. So this conversation between a student and a campus worker, usually the student is a little confused about something. They have a question about something. They're not sure. So that's your first goal. You want to listen for that. This example here, they have some small talk, and then the woman says, speaking of real-world application, that's sort of what I wanted to talk to you about. The student exchange program. Oh, sure, you're thinking about going somewhere? Well, I have a couple places in mind, but my heart's set on Guatemala. But the problem is that the man says, I hate to tell you this, but the exchange program in Guatemala is only for Spanish majors, and the Spanish department is usually pretty strict about that. So the student has a question. They're a little bit confused about the Guatemala thing. They want to go there. And so there's a problem. And then the campus worker explains the situation, right? So the student's a little confused here. They're a little confused about what they have to do to go to Guatemala for the student exchange program. And the campus worker explains the situation, right? The woman says, no, there has to be some way. And then the man explains, why is for the Spanish department and people studying Spanish. So that's basically how these work, is that the student has a question, a problem, a confusion, or they want some clarification about something. So they come there, they ask the campus worker, they talk about it, and the campus worker's like, oh, yeah, but... And then the campus worker starts explaining the problem, explaining the situation, and explaining why something is a certain way. And then they identify how the student feels about the explanation at the end. So the reason why this is your goal is because a lot of times there's a question like, how does the student feel at the end? This isn't always the case, but that's usually, that question comes up pretty often. And that's usually at the end, the student says, woman says, really, professor, thank you, that means so much to me. So obviously the student's pretty excited. So that's how the student feels. This is a kind of outline of the transcript and what a normal kind of conversation looks like between the student and the campus worker. I'm not going to go through all of this. You can take a screenshot of this, check this out, but this is usually kind of how it's structured and how it works. So keep that in mind. That should be your goal when you're listening to the conversation. Now, if you need more practice, more teachers, tests, courses, check out tstprep.com. We have everything you need. If you need more help with the TOEFL listening or any TOEFL section, our teachers are here, ready to help you out with anything that you need. Usually I recommend students, kind of do things on their own first. Try to do your best, try to improve. And then if you feel like you need more support, if you feel like you need some more advice and some more feedback that's personal, that's just for you, then you should work with a teacher. Or you need more practice, you can check out our site. Or you need some courses, we're there too. All right, tstprep.com, check it out. Now let's talk about the lecture and the goals you should have before you start to listen. The first goal is to find an important detail within the first minute. Now, to be honest, a lot of lectures, they're long, they're 5 minutes long. And sometimes the first minute is not really that important. The reason why I want you to try to find something important in the first minute is to get you ready, to get you kind of active. You're like, okay, I'm listening. What's important? Let me find something here. Okay, maybe that's important. Okay, and that's why. Because when you're active, when you're trying to have a goal in mind, this will help you become a more precise and better listener. So maybe there's nothing important in the first minute, but that's why I recommend it. Okay, so you look here at the lecture format, and this is a lecture, transcript. Of course, you can't see the transcript. You can't see the lecture when you're listening, but I just wanted to put it here so you can see it's really long, right? Lots of information. And the first part is background information, the part highlighted in yellow. And then the second part specifies the main idea. This is where the teacher will start talking about the main idea. So to give you an example, let's say the topic is Christmas. The first paragraph is maybe background information about Christmas. Like, I don't know a lot about Christmas's history, but it was started as a Nordic tradition in Finland. It was called Christmas, and there was a guy named Kris Kringle, and people don't know how it started, and anyway, so there's background information. And then the second part, the part highlighted in red, is the teacher will specify the main idea. We'll get more specific. So let's say the main idea of this is about 2 Christmas traditions nowadays. Okay, so while the history of the Christmas tradition is a bit hazy, we do know more about the way Christmas is celebrated nowadays. Let's take America, for example. In America, so that's, kind of specifying the main idea. And then the third part will provide additional details and examples. So in America, for Christmas, a lot of people give presents, but it's not the same. For example, in Asia, Christmas is seen as a romantic holiday, and couples in Japan will go to Kentucky Fried Chicken and eat fried chicken. That's actually true. But anyway, that's how it's kind of set up, how the lecture's set up. I just highlighted a couple things that I wrote down from the beginning here that I would write down in my notes. Okay, so geology is the study of Earth's crust and that have shaped its surface throughout history. Heat escaping from the interior provides energy. Okay, maybe that's important. So I wrote that down, right? Middle of 20th century, maybe that's important. So I wrote that down. So you're just kind of guessing what's important. You don't really know exactly. Okay, so that's why first minute, just write down some things that you think might be important. Second goal is to try to identify the 2 ways the teacher explains the topic. So the example of Christmas is pretty simple. Oh, well, the teacher explained Christmas, gave an example of American tradition of giving gifts and the Japanese tradition of couples eating chicken at Kentucky Fried Chicken. So that is pretty simple, but of course it's more complicated than that in the TOEFL. But that's your goal. That's what you're trying to listen for. There aren't always 2 examples. It's not always so clear, but you're just trying to figure out, trying to write down, what you think is the way that the teacher explains the topic. I explained Christmas through traditions in America and traditions in Japan. How does the teacher explain, in this example here, about, I think, plate tectonics, right? So I'm not going to go through this whole passage, but I encourage you to pause this and try to highlight some things. I said, okay, this guy Wegener first thought of continental drift. So maybe this is about continental drift. Okay, he proposed that the similarities between fossils found only in South America and Africa indicated that these 2 continents were joined. Okay, so I try to write down that idea in my notes. And then what happened to Wegener? Well, after he gave this suggestion, he was met with a hostile reaction. This is about his theory and the reaction to his theory. So that's what I'm writing in my notes. Now, again, this is not easy to do, so I'm not saying that this is always very clear. I'm just showing you some goals that you should have before. This is how you're going to improve your score, because you're listening for these things. You want to understand the passage, but you also want to maybe listen for an important detail, try to find the way that the teacher explains the topic, and what the teacher wants the students to know. What's the main idea? So at the end, you want to think, okay, what did the teacher want the students to know about this topic? That's what you want to kind of know by the end. You don't have to listen for the main idea. Usually the teacher doesn't say it. Like today we're going to talk about Christmas. It's usually not that clear what the main idea is. But one of your goals is that by the end of this, you understand the main idea. The first question is always, what's the main idea? So that's why that should be your third goal here. So if you need more help with this, I know it's a bit difficult, but that's how you improve your score by 3 points. It's that you have a goal in mind. In this case, 3 goals in mind for conversations and 3 goals for lectures. So become an active listener. Think about what you want to understand. It doesn't matter if you actually understand all this stuff. What matters is that you have a goal before you start listening, and that's going to improve your score. So I hope you found this helpful. Check this out if you need more help and you need more tips about some popular mistakes that people make in the TOEFL listening. And I'll see you there. All right, thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.